Hi, I'm Nick Zagolis, owner of Family Canine Dog Training. Today we're going to be talking about socialization, so grab a cup of coffee and stick around. Most people know that you're supposed to socialize your puppies, but what does it really mean to socialize your dog? What are some of the common mistakes people make? How can they be avoided? And what are some of the better practices to use when socializing your dog? First, let's just talk about the word socialization and what it means. For me, it means that my dog is comfortable in her skin in the world that she lives in. And I'm going to make sure that she's even exposed to things beyond the world she lives in. So I'm going to give her a broader horizon, a broader palette of experiences to draw from, so that throughout her lifetime she'll feel good no matter the circumstance we put her in, or she'll have the coping mechanisms to trust herself and her past experiences and to trust me in these new environments. A lot of people think that socializing a puppy means bringing it to play with other puppies, and while that can be true, that's just one tiny fragment of what it means to really truly socialize a pup. And that can even have detrimental effects if it's done wrong or if it's overdone. So if you're bringing your puppy out to play with other puppies, you've got to be very careful, A, that the other puppies are safe to be around, that they're healthy, that they're a good fit for your puppy in terms of temperament and in terms of compatibility, energy levels, in terms of their reactions. You don't want to bring a young, impressionable puppy around an aggressive pup. You don't want to bring it around a particularly fearful pup. That goes into avoidance very quickly, because what's going to happen there is if you have a very friendly and outgoing puppy and the other puppy is very fearful, no one's got training and off-leash recalls on 8, 9, 10-week-old puppies. It just doesn't exist. So you're going to put them there, and it's basically just a very volatile situation. And your very playful puppy is going to be understandably excited and chasing around the fearful one. The fearful one's going to run away, try and run and hide. And when the running and hiding doesn't work, at some point that fearful one's going to snap at your puppy. And what's the takeaway, right? When you're socializing your puppy, you always have to be thinking, what is my dog going to take away from this experience? What is going to be the lasting effect and the lasting impression that my dog says, okay, this is 1 + 1 = X in this case for me. So next time I'm in this scenario, this is what I can reasonably expect to happen. And if your dog gets snapped at, even worse, if your dog gets bit, scared, injured, that's the takeaway. And there's no amount of coddling, there's no amount of hugging, kissing, and saying you're sorry to your puppy that's going to change that experience in your puppy's mind. So be very, very careful when you're socializing your puppy with other dogs that you're putting it in a safe environment. Okay, that you're not just throwing it into the water and hoping it knows how to swim all on its own, because that's not a safe way to socialize your puppy. You want to bring it around other dogs that have a good temperament and that are going to leave your dog with a good takeaway from that experience. So just like I said before, where I want to expose my dog to the world she lives in and have her feel comfortable in the world she lives in, I also want to expose my dog to additional things. So in our particular situation, we live out in the country. It's a pretty remote environment. There's not a lot of vehicular traffic. There's not a lot of noise. I want to make sure that if cars and trucks and sidewalks, we don't have them. We're more likely to see a horse than a sidewalk out here. So then we go to New York City, and shock of all shocks for my dog, she's now in a very urban environment. I want her to feel comfortable there. We're there for 3 or 4 days. She doesn't really have time to adapt. Okay, she would adapt, a lot of dogs would adapt over time, but it's really a shock to the system. It's even a shock for us, quite frankly. So I want my dog to be comfortable in different environments. And I'm just using this transformation from country to a very urban environment, but it could be any multitude of changes. You want to expose your dog to a multitude of things. It's very, very helpful. So I would take Cow, this is my bulldog Cow. I would take Cow as a young puppy, put her in the car, and bring her into the city. I would bring her into different environments and expose her to things, so that later on in life, when she's shown these things, when she's put in different circumstances, it's not completely new to her. She has a memory of this. Hey, I've seen this before. It's worked out. It's okay. So I'm going to show you some video footage of her walking around the middle of Manhattan, and really I had a GoPro on her back, on her harness, And it's amazing to see all the bags and feet and everything just moving into the dog's face. And she's completely unfazed by this. And that's just fantastic. And a lot of that is due to her having been exposed to a city environment from a young age. We would maybe go once or twice a week for a while, and that was enough for her to have exposure to that environment, and then that carried her forward into the rest of her life. I like to think of socialization as building my dog's immune system, okay? Because we can't eliminate environmental stress, we can't eliminate social stress, we can't eliminate stress, period. So I'm not trying to keep my dog in my pocket, I'm not trying to hold my dog and cuddle my dog and pet my dog and tell my dog everything's gonna be okay. I want my dog to feel that things are gonna be okay. And if you're watching this and you've got a fear of anything, if you've got a phobia, and someone else tells you, don't worry, it's okay, those words have never made you feel better, okay? No one ever has felt better from someone else telling them, don't worry, it's okay. Now I want you to step back and think about what it's like for a dog. A dog doesn't understand your words. Your dog might recognize certain words because you've conditioned your dog to, but your dog doesn't innately understand your words. So when you're telling your dog it's okay, your dog's not getting the message. I assure you this. And if you want proof, just watch all the people with fearful, nervous dogs and watch how often they tell their dogs everything's okay. The dog doesn't just sit back and go, yeah, hey, you know what? Yeah, you're right, everything's okay. It doesn't work like that, okay? So I'm trying to build my dog's immunity to environmental and social and all sorts of stress. And I just want my dog to feel like it's okay. That's the most powerful thing you can do for your dog, is give your dog the experience so that the dog walks away feeling like, hey, I'm all right, everything's cool, okay? There's a real difference between us trying to make a dog feel better and a dog just feeling good. So why do we socialize our dogs? Well, we socialize our dogs for a multitude of reasons. Number one, as I've said many times, I want my dog to feel comfortable and secure in the world she lives in. Number two, I'm trying to avoid behavioral problems, okay? We know it's been proven for years and years and years that fear will always bring aggression, okay? At the very least, fear is gonna bring a dog that just wants to run away and hide from everything, but most dogs get past the run away and hide because they realize that it doesn't work for them, right? Your dog is trying to problem solve. When it feels afraid of something, it wants the thing that's causing the fear to go away so that it can feel safe again. So running away is one option. And when the dog figures out that running away doesn't work, well then what happens next is the dog is going to move forward to try and chase away. And we want to avoid this. We want to avoid aggressive responses to situations that don't warrant aggression. So a dog passing in the street, the other dog is just minding its own business. Now we're walking a very fearful dog. That dog knows it can't run away, it's on a leash, so it lunges out. And it acts aggressively, whether it's growling, snapping, actively trying to attack the dog, or if it's showing that same aggressive response towards people. We don't want that, right? It's not good for the world around us, it's not good for our dogs, it's not good for us, no one's having fun. So we're socializing our dog to try and prevent these problems. Somewhere along the line, we've kind of misconstrued the true meaning of socialization. So trying to teach the dog to feel comfortable in her skin and in the world that's around her, to equating it with being a social butterfly. And there are problems that come from that. Number one, if you're taking your dog to play with other dogs, and your dog loves this, and let's assume that your dog's having a great time and all the other dogs are wonderful. So overall, it's a good thing. After a while, what's happening is your dog's focus has shifted now from you to the other dogs. It's not balanced. And if you want proof of that, just walk with your dog up to other dogs. You don't have to go right up to them, but just be in their general area. And stand still. Where's your dog's focus? Does your dog show an interest in the other dogs but check in with you? Does your dog actively focus on the other dogs and try and go towards them, pull you towards them? Does your dog whine, cry, bark, lunge, drag you on the leash towards the other dogs? You're training your dog, if that's the case, to hyper focus on other dogs. Now, most social dogs love to play with other dogs, and that in itself, as I've said, is great. I don't have an issue with that. Our dog is very playful. All my dogs have always been very dog friendly, okay? But at the same time, I want my dog's focus on me. And if you're going to teach your dog that every time it sees another dog, that's playtime, and the dog loses its mind and loses its focus, you're going to have a very hard time out on your walks, and you're going to have a very hard time out in the real world with your dog. So it's best to try and find a nice middle ground and a balance. So I'm not at all saying don't let your dog play with other dogs. I know there are trainers that are very extreme one way and very extreme the other way. I'm somewhere where I'd like to think I'm in the middle, and there can be a nice golden kind of middle area where everybody wins and everybody's happy. The dog can be social, the dog can be well trained, the dog can be focused when I need it to be, and it's good all around. What I like to do is I'll have my dog play with other dogs, but I'm really going to, sorry, we've got a lot of mosquitoes out today. I'm going to really spend a lot of time playing with my dog, rewarding my dog, showing my dog that I am the most positive thing, the most exciting thing to be around. And in doing so, what I'm doing is I'm building my dog's natural focus and my dog's natural desire to be around me and to want to be with me. So that this way, when it's playing with other dogs, even before I start to apply obedience to those situations, my dog will often leave playing with other dogs and just shift her focus to me, just because. She thinks I'm a cool guy, okay? So that is what I'm trying to do. And if you're going out there and you're the person who feeds the dog, walks the dog, cleans up after the dog, but shows the dog that the highlight of the dog's day is playing with other dogs, you're going to come out on the short end of the deal every single time. So make sure that you're the key focus for your dog, and continue to allow your dog to play with other dogs, but still try and remain the key focus. Find what your dog loves to do and do it with your dog. If that's tug of war, if that's treat training, if it's just physical play, whatever it is, do that with your dog. Hey, sweetheart. Do that with your dog so that your dog loves to be with you. You have the power, the ability to be the most important thing in your dog's life by just spending some time every day doing the things that your dog loves. And it's really very simple. Most dogs value very few things, and it's very easy to figure out what they value, and you can just go right to the top of the list, right to the top of that pole of being number one to your dog by doing those things. One of the key things you want to avoid is when you see other dogs on a walk, don't bring your dog up to every other dog. There's a lot of problems with that. Number one, you don't know if that dog is friendly, okay? And I can tell you, I've been doing this for over 25 years. Not all dogs are friendly. And not all dog owners are honest when you're out on a walk. You're walking your dog and you've got a friendly dog, so you view the world as full of friendly dogs, and your dog views the world as full of friendly dogs. And you say, hey, is your dog friendly? And they go, oh yeah. Maybe they're trying to work something out with their dog. I have seen this happen time and again. Oh yeah, don't worry. And then you bring your dog up and sure enough, the dog snaps. Or maybe they're honest. Maybe their dog is very friendly, but maybe on that day, in that moment, it just wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good mix. Don't bring your dog up to every dog. Another problem with bringing your dog up to every other dog you see is you're conditioning your dog that, hey, every time we see a dog, we're gonna go. And then you're gonna call a dog trainer and say, every time we see a dog on our walks, he loses his mind. You've trained that, okay? So I'm not saying don't bring your dog up to other dogs, okay? But don't bring your dog up to every dog, and try and gain a little focus first. If your dog loves to greet other dogs, and let's say it's a dog that you know, it's a known entity, that's a friendly dog, you know that it's a safe thing. So that, there's no more question mark. Get a little focus from your dog first. If your dog can sit, lie down, heel, give a paw, speak on command, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not about what the dog is doing. It's simply about getting focus. If you can get some focus from your dog, and then you want to reward your dog by saying release, free, okay, whatever your word is, and then allow your dog to go say hi, great. Now you've just shown your dog that focusing on you pays off. You've shown your dog that it's not going to indiscriminately run up and lose its mind and lose focus every time it sees another dog. And you've also reinforced the fact that working for you pays, and that you're a fair leader and that walks are fun. We've got a big B over here behind Cow. So you want to make sure that you're doing this with safe dogs, and that you're not teaching your dog to just charge to every dog, because it's going to be a real problem when you want to go for a walk and your dog is losing its mind all the time because there's other dogs in the immediate environment. If your dog has an issue, okay, if your dog's got a fear of something, be it dogs, people, environmental stress, what have you, and you keep bringing your dog into that situation, hoping it'll work itself out just through continued exposure, you're likely making the problem worse. And this is something you need to stop doing right away. Okay, that's very important, because if you're just going to keep repeating the same patterns over and over, what you're doing is you're cementing your dog's belief system, you're cementing your dog's behavior, and it's only going to intensify. It's amazing to me as a dog trainer how people will do the same things over and over and over with their dog while not seeing any forward movement, not seeing any progress, and then say he just doesn't get it or he's stubborn. No, we have to find a better, smarter way to do something. If your dog has a fear of something, you need to respect that, and you need to understand that doing the same thing over and over, well, that's likely what caused the problem, or at least contributed to it, and you're only going to make matters worse. You need to contact a professional, and you need someone who can break it down into baby steps and help guide you and your dog so that you can have little baby successes and then build on those, because what you're doing is it's a confidence game. You're simply trying to build your dog's confidence in that things are going to work out. It'll be okay. Let's take a minute and talk about why a dog reacts the way it does to different things in its world. It's really very simple. Genetics and experience. That's all it is. We can never underestimate the role genetics play in how a dog reacts to something. And anyone who doesn't understand that is doomed. I just got off the phone, well, it was yesterday in fact, with someone who's got a Jack Russell. And the minute someone says they have a Jack Russell, I can almost assume what their laundry list of problems are going to be. And I love Jack Russells. I've trained tons of them. They're fantastic dogs, but they're not for everybody. And sure enough, I said, well, I hope you're active. I hope you like coffee. You know, I made a couple of little jokes. Oh yeah, we love that side of her. You know, it's great. And then sure enough, every single problem had to do with the dog's energy level. Well, they bought the wrong genetics. Okay, or they just have to learn how to train and also how to manage that, because they didn't strike me as lazy people. So I'm definitely not picking on them, but definitely in terms of understanding what role genetics play in a dog's behavior, I think they probably underestimated that. We can never underestimate the role genetics play. And I can give you stories that this video would be 5 days long about how genetics have influenced dogs' behavior, and how I've shown clients that once they've understood that, they've been better able to understand their dogs and better able to apply training and lifestyle changes that has made living with that dog easier. So a dog's genetics, now we're not just talking about the breed of dog or the mix of breeds of a dog. We're also talking about genetic traits, so predisposition to fear, to aggression, to chasing, to whatever, to barking, to the tone of the bark. It's amazing how deep genetics go. The other aspect, the other factor is experience. Experience is like a cinematic role that just plays in the dog's mind. So you take a dog who had a bad experience. Let's say the dog is walking through the kitchen and a frying pan falls, hits the dog on the head. If that was one experience that the dog had in the kitchen, one of 100, the dog may just shrug it off. If that was the very first experience, the dog may not want to go into the kitchen, and the dog may not, even though the food and water dishes are there, you may find that the dog won't go in to eat or drink for a day or two, okay? And there's a combination of factors at play there as well. So what we want to do when we're socializing our dog is we want to look for whatever that dog's weaknesses are, and we want to maximize our ability to influence that dog's reaction, that dog's level of comfort when we perceive a weakness in that dog. So if the dog has a phobia of other dogs or sounds, environments, people, what have you, the minute we see where the dog has just a, oh, I don't know about that, then we want to start exposing our dog to that in a very scripted, very crafted, very safe and structured way, where we're just going baby step by baby step. Many people, when they're training their dogs for anything at all, whether they're trying to socialize their dog, potty train their dog, obedience train their dog, whatever they're working on, don't get the concept of baby steps. You've got to learn that you're not working on your timeline, you're working on your dog's timeline. You may want progress right away. You may want your dog in this particular context to feel good right away, but it doesn't work like that. So you've got to learn when to be satisfied with a win. And it may be a smaller win than you want. You may have wanted your dog to be able to go this far today, but maybe your dog can only go this far. And if that's the best your dog can do, then that's great, because at least you walk away with the dog feeling good about having done this. And this can be anything, can be obedience, can be socialization, can be whatever it is we're working on. As long as there was positive movement, that's all we need to take away, because tomorrow or later that day when you're gonna have another training session, you're starting from a good place and your dog is being put in a situation that it walked away from previously feeling good about. So you're starting from something positive rather than overdoing things and the dog walks away. The takeaway that the dog has from that situation is, oh, I don't know about this. And then the next time you go in, what do you think you're starting with? You're starting with stress. And a dog, just like a person, can only handle so much stress before it starts to shut down. So think about it. You don't want to stress your dog out. And in particular, when it comes to socialization and you're seeing that the dog has stress, if the stress is coming from the environment and now the stress is equally coming from the handler at the same time, that's bad. Now the walls are closing in on the dog, so you don't want that. You want to be a safe place for your dog. You want your dog to feel safe with you, that you're always bringing your dog into a good and safe circumstance where something positive is going to happen. So I talked a little bit before about our dogs having neutral reactions to things and how that can be a desirable thing and a very positive thing. Let's basically talk about their reactions and break them down into three basic categories. On one far extreme, we've got negative reactions, and that's something I'm looking to avoid with my dog, okay? And if I do see that my dog has a negative response to things, then I want to help the dog come more over to the neutral or happy category. So negative, like I said, is something we want to avoid. Neutral is just fine with me. Neutral means my dog is comfortable. Neutral means that I'm out with my dog and it doesn't care about the things around it, okay? Think of a seeing eye dog. That's a great example of neutral, okay? If you're seeing someone walking down the street with a seeing eye dog, if the dog had the polar opposite to the negative, the dog had just an overjoyed, happy response to every person and dog that it saw, the person that it's guiding, the blind person that is supposed to be led to safety by this dog, would die. Because that dog's response, being so overjoyed and so overstimulated by the environment, would be reacting to everything around it and dragging its owner to every person, every dog, and so forth, okay? So neutral is great. When we talk about neutral, what we're talking about is a dog that's comfortable and just not reacting. As I said earlier, we've kind of gone to that far extreme where we think our dog needs to be overjoyed and overly excited by all the people and dogs in its environment, and that's not necessarily a desirable thing. And being neutral doesn't indicate fear. In fact, being neutral is the opposite of fear. Neutral means that I know you're there, I'm comfortable with you being there, it's just not that significant to me, or at least right now it's not that significant to me, okay? So we've got fearful or negative, we've got neutral, and then we've got overjoyed. Overjoyed is fine too. I don't have a problem with that as long as we've got the ability to gain our dog's focus, okay? Some puppies are just born overjoyed, okay? I'll show you a video of a dog that I'm training named Murphy, he's so overjoyed that he'll pee all over your feet. Just, all you have to do is walk over to him, okay? And he knows he's doing it. He tries to backpedal a little bit, and then as soon as he squirts out a little bit, he turns into a pretzel. Okay, he turns right into a pretzel. Murphy was born overjoyed. Okay, and he's a good fit for his people because they're very, very sweet people. So we've got to understand our dogs, and we've got to understand their reactions. When we see negative or fearful, we're trying to bring that dog into neutral. If you're socializing your dog who's got a negative reaction to something and you're starting to see a neutral response, don't be discouraged. That's fantastic. Okay, neutral is great. Neutral is the opposite of fear and stress. Okay, so when my dog, who's maybe afraid of something, lies down and falls asleep in the presence of whatever that is, that's great. Lying down and being bored is the opposite of stress. Falling asleep, that's really the opposite of stress, and a dog knows that it's just so vulnerable when it lies down and allows itself to drift off. What it's saying is, you're no longer a threat to me. You're no longer a significant threat to me that I feel safe enough to make myself vulnerable. I'll lie down, I'll fall asleep, I'll drop my guard because I'm not scared anymore. So that's pretty great. We've kind of deluded ourselves into thinking that our dogs have to be overjoyed and overstimulated and just over everything. It's like over caffeinated in their responses to things in order for us to perceive them as feeling safe around those things. We don't need that, and it leads to a lot of behavioral problems. Okay, it leads to a lot of focus problems, a lot of control problems. It leads to a lot of reactivity problems. Okay, I work with a lot of dogs every day where people call me and they say, my dog is perfectly friendly, but he's so reactive on leash. Yeah, because you've taught him from a young age that every time we see another dog, we're going to run up to that other dog. Or maybe you just had a dog that was born super hyper social and you didn't gain control of that when you needed to at those critical times, and so now you're paying the price. Okay, so we don't need to see that overstimulated, overjoyed response. If that's a natural thing in your dog, you want to try and gain focus early on. And remember what I said, you want to try and show your dog right from go that you're the person, you're the thing that's going to bring the most pleasure to your dog every single day, so that the dog wants to just naturally focus on you. Okay, so remember what I said: negative or scared, neutral, and overjoyed. We're trying to be somewhere over here, and if you've got a dog at either extreme, you're trying to bring your dog somewhere into the middle. We're going for that neutral. Okay, neutral does not mean scared. Okay, remember that. We tend to confuse sometimes neutral with scared because we've been taught to believe that our dog needs to be this social butterfly and needs to be so just extreme in its response to things, when that's not the case. So let's take a minute now and talk about dogs that are a little bit more towards the not social side. If you have a dog that's more towards the not social side, that's okay. Okay, we tend to think that our dogs have to be super social, and that's not the case. Not every dog was born social. Not every dog wants to play with other dogs. Certainly if your dog's trying to hurt other dogs, no, that's not okay. And if you know that your dog is a danger or a potential threat to other dogs, and you're bringing your dog into situations with other dogs hoping it'll work itself out, that's definitely not okay. But if your dog isn't comfortable with other dogs, if your dog doesn't enjoy playing with other dogs, and you're content to just keep to yourselves and mind your business, that's okay. Not every dog is meant to be social. And when I talk about social, I'm not just talking about dogs interacting with other dogs. Not every dog enjoys the company of random strangers, and that's fine too. Again, as long as your dog is not trying to hurt people, as long as your dog is not a threat and endangering anyone, it's fine if your dog doesn't enjoy company of strangers. Not every dog is meant to be touched and petted by strangers, okay? So if you've got a dog that's got a less than social response, okay, but it's comfortable in its skin, it's content to walk by other dogs, it's content to walk by other people, it just doesn't necessarily want to interact. Some people are like that too. That's fine. We don't tell them they have to change. Don't try and change your dog. If you've got a dog that's not comfortable being playful or interacting with other dogs or other people, and you want to try and force the issue, I promise you that in most cases you're going to make the problem worse. And the reason is you're going to force your dog into a situation that your dog doesn't have the coping skills for, that you don't have the tools to read your dog when your dog is telling you, hey, I've had enough, and that you don't have the control over your dog to be able to control your dog's reaction. Because sometimes the dog can just give a little reaction, and if you've got enough training, you're able to tell your dog, hey, nope, that's not okay, knock it off. And what you're doing is you're keeping your dog's emotions in check. Now, if you do have the training for that, and you put your dog in that situation, even then, how many times can you tell a dog to knock it off before you realize you're not being fair to that particular dog? So just because you can control the dog in a certain situation doesn't mean we should force the dog in that situation and force the dog to tolerate over and over and over something it's not comfortable with, because eventually something's got to give. So keep that in mind when you're socializing your dog. You've got to understand that there's a whole spectrum of what it means to socialize a dog, and you've got to accept your dog for what it is. And at the same time, while you're working on your dog's weaknesses, you've got to learn at some point, hey, this is kind of the range of what my dog is comfortable with, and I'm good with that, I'm willing to work with that. Well, whether you're willing to work with it or not, that's what you've got to work with. So you've got to learn to accept when enough is enough and work with those parameters. So Cow, for instance, is a very social dog. She loves people, but the way she's approached makes a big difference to her. So we tell people that are new to her, hey, just let her come to you. Okay, and she'll go over and she'll sniff and she'll lean her butt in, and as soon as she leans her butt in, we know that's it. Carte blanche, do what you want with the dog. She's a little bit sensitive with men that she doesn't know, and in particular if they're very tall. So we'll tell them, don't lean over her right away, let her warm up to you. And by warm up, I mean she'll just sniff, and again, eventually she'll kind of lean in or lean her butt, and that's it, okay? I know my dog, I know how she responds to certain things, and it's my obligation as her owner, to her and to the person, because I want the person to have a positive experience. It's my obligation to everyone involved to take charge of that situation and to say, okay, this is how it's gonna go, and everyone walks away happy, okay? My older dog, Hype, my Dutch Shepherd, who passed away a number of years ago, he was way more social than her. It didn't matter who you were. He'd just charge you, and he just assumed the world was his friend. I didn't have to tell anyone anything. It's just, here's the dog, go and be happy together. Okay, so different dogs, different temperaments, different responses, different thresholds. You've got to understand what's at play here and know what you're working with your dog, and accept your dog for what your dog is. Don't try to force your dog to be something your dog isn't. Can a dog who's fearful or aggressive or just not social be trained or taught to be social? I'm going to say yes in certain cases, but we're not really training the dog to be social. We're working with the dog and we're training the dog, and we're just bringing out what the dog naturally had available, and we're just capitalizing, we're maximizing on what that dog's tendencies naturally were. So remember what I said earlier, genetics and experience. So I'm going to use two different dogs here to illustrate, and they're both really interesting cases, so just bear with me for a minute. The first dog, Kaylee, is a dog that clients of mine, well, they weren't clients at the time, they rescued this dog. It was just a loose dog up at their country place, and they would see the dog all the time, and they eventually rescued that dog, took the dog in, and the dog, when they came into the city, would just go nuts around any other dog. And so they looked for help. They found a training school. They went to this school, and the dog's aggression was so high towards other dogs, which is understandable, right? This was just a loose dog living out in the country, having to fend for itself. Who knows what experiences this dog had? Who knows what the daily life was like for this dog? So they go into this training school, and the dog is just going bananas trying to kill other dogs in the class. The trainer puts the owners and the dog literally behind sheets of plywood, okay? Says, we can't bring your dog near other dogs. Your dog is feral. Now I'm quoting what they said, the other trainer said. Your dog is feral. Your dog just can't be around other dogs. And the problem went from really bad to really, really bad, and it just kept getting worse. To eventually, the owner of the dog, Sherry, was dragged off her feet, literally face first onto the ground, because her dog was trying to go after another dog, and someone stopped and helped her in that moment when it happened and gave her my name and number, and they contacted me. And we worked together, and I could see right away, Kaylee was actually a very sweet, very scared dog, and the owners were lovely people, and so we worked together, and they did a great job at training their dog. And we could see early on that there were definitely social tendencies in this dog, and the dog had probably a ton of bad experience and it didn't understand that things could go a different way, right? Dogs are very pattern-based creatures, right? If a dog barks at a doorbell, it always barks at the doorbell. If a dog chases squirrels, then squirrels always draw that dog's eye. So in this case, around other dogs, the dog learned that aggression was the only way to problem solve. And all we needed to do was show her there's a different way to respond to dogs. And we trained Kaylee together. And in the video, you'll see Kaylee loose in a dog park. Now, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of dog parks, but in this case, they wanted to go to a dog park with their dog, and so I worked in that environment with them. And you can see clearly that Kaylee is really at ease. Kaylee is also very comfortable. She's very focused when need be. And if I didn't point out who Kaylee was in the video, you'd never know. It wasn't like there's a bunch of dogs and then there's one dog with its tail tucked and, oh yeah, there's Kaylee, that's easy enough to spot. No, she looks just as comfortable as any other dog in that environment. So yeah, in that case, she definitely became more social. Another dog that leaps to mind is a dog, funnily enough, the dog's name is Spooky. Spooky's owner, Martin, contacted me, and among other issues, Spooky had very high aggression towards other dogs. Now, Spooky lived in a family with another dog. They have another dog named Puffy, golden retriever. And Spooky was great with Puffy, very playful with Puffy, but the minute they went out of their house, whether it was as a family with both dogs or just with Spooky by herself, her aggression towards other dogs was off the charts. And Spooky is quite large. I'm gonna say she was maybe 80 or 90 pounds, give or take. And her aggression was very serious. Spooky also had very high fear and aggression towards strange people. So this is a very volatile combination, and Spooky came in to stay at the kennel with me for training, and I gave her a few extra days to warm up to me before we started training. And as soon as we started training, I could see that she gave herself to the training very easily. You know, it made sense to her. Hey, good, I have someone to follow. I don't have to kind of fend for myself. This is great. I'll follow this guy. Things flow nicely. Everything makes sense to me. I feel comfortable. I feel safe. I'm getting a lot of affection, a lot of praise. So she wanted someone to lead her, right? Fearful dogs are not dogs that want to take charge. They're taking charge by default because no one else is taking charge for them. So fearful dogs really want someone to stand up and say, hey, follow me. Let's go this way. This will all work out. The minute they see that and they see that it works out, they're super happy taking a back seat and following you. So I start to work with Spooky around other dogs, and of course I'm bringing her around safe dogs. Remember what I said, experiences have a cumulative effect. So of course I'm bringing her around dogs that are just super playful and bouncy, but not too in your face. I don't want her to feel overwhelmed either, okay? They're just nice dogs to be around, very pleasant, okay? It would be the equivalent of you being in the elevator with someone who smiles and gives you a nod and maybe a pleasant hello. They're not close talkers. They're not trying to touch you. They're not inviting you to dinner at the house that night, because that would be a little weird. So just very kind of friendly but easygoing dogs. And sure enough, she became super playful. So yes, some dogs, not all dogs, can be taught to be social. And again, I say taught to be social, but I'm not teaching the dog. It's not like we're teaching a dog sit, come, heel, and stay. We're not telling the dog, do this. The dog is actually choosing to be social, and that is largely due to what's underneath the hood, so to speak. So I'm training the dog, and I'm teaching the dog to control its reactions. I'm teaching the dog to control its emotional response to things. And as a result, some dogs can become very social. Some dogs can't, and they can still be controllable, or at least a lot more controllable than they originally were. And like I said, we have to learn when is enough, right? When is enough? So some dogs will be much more social as a result. Other dogs won't necessarily be any more social, but they'll be a lot more manageable, and that makes life for their owners and for the dog much more enjoyable. And then just learn to tell yourself when enough is enough. I've trained many dogs that had social issues, that had big aggression, that after the training they were very manageable. And of course their owners desire for their dog to be social, so they continue to try to put the dog into social situations despite all of my talking, despite all of my advice. And I understand what it is they're trying to achieve, and I'm very patient in warning them and guiding them through the steps. And very often I'll get a call back and say, you know what, you're right. I was able to control my dog, but I kept trying to force my dog into a situation, and I could see over time he wasn't comfortable and it wasn't fair to him. Or, wow, we really had a close call and she almost went after that person or that dog, whereas I was able to control the dog and I forced the issue, and I really shouldn't have. Thankfully, no one got hurt, so now I know not to force that issue. And one German Shepherd comes to mind where I trained him and he did really well, and I would get these thank you emails from the owner, and then after a while the emails were, but we just want him to be okay around people. And their version of okay was that people are able to interact with him. And I said, but he doesn't like that. He's not comfortable with that. They were able to have him stay on his place and have people over. And before, people couldn't even get in the front door. Okay? There was a real risk of a bite happening, just someone walking into the house. Now that dog is over there on his place. And to the casual observer, they would just see a well-trained dog. He's not threatening, he's not growling, he's not showing any aggression. Okay? Nope, wasn't good enough. They wanted the dog to be able to be touched. They wanted to have that, remember what I said, they wanted to have that hyper positive kind of Disneyland experience where everyone's running through the fields happily together. Not every dog is capable of that. Okay? And so they pushed the issue, and again, no one got hurt, but there was a close call. And that's when I thought, my obligation, I'm going to be a little more blunt. You need to cut this out. This is going to end very badly. You need to learn to accept your dog for what your dog is, and all the while you're always trying to work on your dog, work on your dog's socialization skills, work on your dog's obedience skills, work on your focus, work on your bond with your dog so that your dog wants to focus on you. All of those things. But understand that your dog has limitations, just like you and I have limitations. So if we're going to sum this video up in a few sentences, let's take a look. Socialization, what is it? It's showing my dog that the world around her is a safe place. We've got 3 basic responses: fearful and aggressive or negative, neutral, and super happy positive. And we're always going for anywhere from the middle to the super happy positive. If you've got a dog that's at either extreme, try and bring it somewhere into the middle. Okay? Not every dog is capable of being a social butterfly, and that's okay. Be a responsible dog owner. Know your dog, know your dog's responses, and don't put your dog into situations where he or she could be a danger to others. Don't put your dog into situations where others can be a danger to him, whether the danger is very real and physical or whether it's just psychological, because that has a cumulative effect as well. And above all, be the highlight and the focus of your dog's day, so that when you contact a dog trainer for help, you've already got a good foundation. Your dog likes being with you. Don't just be the food delivery and chauffeur to the dog park or to the doggy daycare. Spend time with your dog. Do what your dog loves to do. It's going to pay off 100-fold through the lifetime of your dog, and quite frankly, it's probably the most fun you're going to have. It's when we get to kind of unplug from our stress and all our nonsense of our day, and we just get to let loose and have fun. Till next time, take care and have fun with your dog.